Hi there, welcome back to Apatros Review. This episode, in the year 2889, directed by Larry Buchanan in the year 1969. Basically a telepic for the good old 60s. Hi there, welcome back to Apatros Review, your guide to the wild world of science fiction, action, horror cinema with me, your host, Miller Zipka. If you want to spell my name, just look at the channel name. Now in this episode, we take a look at this is actually only the second Larry Buchanan film I've reviewed for this show. There will be a third sometime in the future, but won't be for a while. Anyway, and this film I'm reviewing is In the Year 2889, which is a 1969 telepic. There are reports that it was made anywhere from 1966 or 1967, but the IMDb lists its premiere as 19th of January 1969. So I'll go with 1969 on this. And it was directed, produced, and edited by Larry Buchanan, and based on a script from Harold Hoffman and Lou Ruzoff. Now, and by the way, if you want to get copies of this film, it's in public domain, so it's practically anyway. Cheap, dull, boring, and tacky are all good adjectives to describe In the Year 2889, an ultra-cheap remake of the Roger Corman 1955 post-apocalyptic classic Day the World Ended, mounted by infamous schlockmeister Larry Buchanan as part of a television syndication deal Buchanan had with American International Pictures. The deal was simple. AIP passed along a number of scripts of old Corman films to Buchanan to remake, and cheapo Larry held up his end of the deal. In this case, he remade Day the World Ended as an extremely cheap, apparently shot in 9 days, remake of an already cheap original. In the Year 2889, by the way, the title is misleading, but it was chosen for the film purely because AIP had bought the rights to the classic Jules Verne novel of the same name, intending to make a film version of it, but the project never worked out, and they simply slapped the title to this film to recompense for having the copyright. It said sometime in the early 1970s or so, as the world is beset by nuclear war. Former US Navy Captain John Ramsey and his young adult daughter Joanna have spent the past 10 years preparing for this, and have built a remote homestead in the middle of a valley surrounded by mountains filled with lead ore, and with a local river that provides a heated geothermal updraft to prevent any radiation from coming in. So essentially they're protected from the radiation. But their doomsday prepping is hampered by two problems. Their food stocks only have enough to supply them with food for a mere handful of months, and Joanna's fiancé Larry was caught up in one of the nuclear blasts while in the nearby sea for supplies and was supposedly killed. What they don't know is that Larry survived but has become a radioactive mutant, prowling the woods in the valley still dressed in what remains of his business suit. A number of other survivors arrive. Steve Morrow, a handsome geologist who was in the area of his brother Granger, who was subject to radiation, a neighboring rancher named Tim, who is only his last bowl of booze for his alcoholism to survive on, and a cheap hood named Mickey and his mole, the stripper Jada. Since there's no way that the canned beans that Ramses have stocked their doomsday prepping will last 7 people for very long, John decides to enact domestic martial law. Since he's pretty much the world's last dictator in a way. Setting limits on food rations, and with his gun he's pretty much in charge. Soon Mickey decides he's had enough of the hostile hospitality and decides to make a move to gain control of the food in the locker, while Granger succumbs to the radiation, and Tim, after having his grog destroyed by John, heads out into the radioactive fog surrounding the valley to kill himself, and mutant Larry is still trying to get his hands on his former fiancée, who John feels is better left for Steve, passing the bachelor his best gun, a Luger pistol with a 32-round Snell drum clip to protect Joanna with. If you've seen the original Day the World Ended, then watching In the Year 2889 is like watching a reenactment of the original, only with upgraded photography. This was shot in color, whereas the original film was monochrome, in other words black and white, and very slight differences in the props and monster design. Actually, the monster design in the original film was actually pretty cheesy by today's standards, even by the standards of 1955, but at least it looked cool enough to pass muster, but only when kept to the shadows. Corman erred somewhat by showing it more necessary, while here the remake's monster is simply a very bad-looking mask, and honestly you can't get scared by a bloke wearing a tattered business suit, unless he's a flesh-eating zombie, of which this mutant most certainly ain't, and having hair as if he had stuck a fork in an electric outlet and gotten a deep shock. Very little in the script was changed, and Buchanan keeps very closely to the script, with only the character names changed. I have heard some people call this a rip-off, but that technically isn't accurate. This is an official remake, but done only to fill the gaps in the television syndication package in the late 1960s by the same studio that made the original film, so there. This is the kind of film that will terminally bore most viewers to a coma, with the constant dull talkiness, and while I didn't hate the biblical references here, both films appeal to Christians, like me, but the film fails to make any sort of interesting use of the religious tropes. The original film did it far better. In the year 2889 falls flat in its white-haired mutant face with a dread D-, 1 out of 10. It is terrible, as this is the case of watching a Larry Buchanan film, and you should only see this if you want to contrast the differences between this and the far superior Roger Corman original, with which you should watch that one instead. Now, for gore and nudity. Being a PG-rated telepic, I have heard rumors that at least one cable television broadcast rated the film NC-17 in America. Who the fuck would do a thing like that? There is no gore, apart from the mutant Larry missing his right eye, and certainly no nudity. Although at the 47th minute, Queen O'Hara is wearing a pair of pants that have a large zipper that, coupled with the mediocre quality of the public domain prints that is fooling around, makes it look like a vagina is outside the pants. It's a pretty funny thing to see. Okay, so in the year 2889 gets a D-, 1 out of 10. It's bad, terrible, atrocious. But the original film was actually pretty decent. Now, in fact, I should point out that the original Day the World Ended was probably the first post-apocalyptic monster film. I mean, it was a film that pretty much... It wasn't the original post-apocalyptic film. In fact, there was a film called Five, which was the first post-apocalyptic film. But Day the World Ended was a film that pretty much set the standard for the rest of the genre. Okay, as you can see, I've actually getting myself a haircut. Looks decent, huh? Got tired of waiting for the lockdown to end. Okay, hope you enjoyed that. Now, I do not do requests, but if you have any questions about DVDs, or if you want to know if I have particular films in my collection, just hit me up in the comment section, I'll answer. And that's about it. Take it easy, keep watching, and stay safe. See ya.